What is up, guys? Welcome to today's prediction video, and for today's prediction video we will be looking at the UEFA Super Cup taking place on the 16th of August between Champions League holders Manchester City and Europa League holders Sevilla. Now, last season was a very iconic season for both of these clubs, Manchester City beating Inter Milan in the Champions League final to win their maiden Champions League title, while Sevilla beating AS Roma in the Europa League final on penalties to extend their record to 7 Europa League titles, more than any other club in that competition. These two sides have met before in the Champions League last season, in the group stages, City coming out on top both in Spain and in England. The more recent meeting between the two was at the Etihad. Sevilla opened the scoring in the 31st minute from a corner, some very poor defending from the home side, Rafa Mir getting his head on the end of it. But I think the most disappointing part about City's defending here is that the keeper is completely rooted to the spot. He does not budge. And I think if he at least tries to lunge at the ball, there's about a 90% chance that he gets his glove on it. But from there, City were chasing the game, and eventually in the second half, in the 52nd minute, because of some very lackluster Sevilla defending, Julian Alvarez is able to play Lewis through, and I think he's playing right back at that point, and he just powers the ball past the keeper at the near post. It is not an easy kind of finish, but he gets enough power and enough accuracy to just blindside the keeper and blast it past him. And then in the 73rd minute, Alvarez turning from provider to goal scorer. On the counter-attack for Manchester City, De Bruyne playing the ball through from the right wing. And again, Sevilla just defending disappointingly. The defender tries to slide in and get to the ball, but he just can't reach it. And what happens is Alvarez is now one-on-one with the keeper. He rounds the keeper and slots the ball into an empty net. City from here try to control the game as they usually do. And then in the 83rd minute, again, Manchester City capitalizing on some poor Sevilla defending. Mahrez being played through and him also just blasting the ball past the keeper into the top corner. I don't think Sevilla played badly in this match. I really don't. I think the defending needed work. It really did. I think there's so many points where just before they concede those goals, they just needed to boot the ball out into safety, and they choose not to. They choose to try and play from the back. And City pressed them so heavily and so highly and so tightly that there's no space for them. And it's fine margins that just needed tweaking, but at the end of the day, Manchester City came out on top as 3-1 winners. So Manchester City, unlike most Champions League winners, went through a bit of an exodus at the squad. Ilkay Gundogan leaving and going to Barcelona, Riyad Mahrez jumping ship and moving to Saudi Arabia. João Cancelo, I think, was a given that he was not going to be in Manchester, but I think, you know, City look very weakened at this point. I think what's happened now is you can see there's a few holes that need plugging. They don't have the squad depth that they used to have, coupled with injuries to players like Kevin De Bruyne and John Stones. It's just gonna make things a little bit difficult for Manchester City going forward. However, I do still think they have too much firepower. 3 players I'd like to talk about. Firstly, Erling Haaland. City beat Burnley 3-0 this weekend. Haaland got a brace, scoring in the 4th minute, I think it was, and in the 35th or 36th minute. But I mean, Haaland is obviously back to scoring form, which is exactly what Manchester City would want from him. Haaland is so good, both feet, he's a powerful player, he's quick, he can head. He, at this point, I would say, is the perfect centre forward. So Haaland, I expect to at least get on the goal sheet for this match. Foden, I think, is another player that I'd like to highlight. Foden is kind of like Guardiola's Swiss Army knife. Foden can play pretty much anywhere in the attacking third, wherever Guardiola needs him to slot in, but he can also play as a central midfielder, just, you know, dribbling the ball out of defense, and then starting attacks for Manchester City from a little bit deeper. He's also very good at scoring in his own right, because he has been able to play as a number 9 for Manchester City. I think Foden is very important going forward. And lastly, I think we need to look at Rodri for Manchester City. So, following the departure of Ilkay Gundogan, there was a lot of talk about where Manchester City would get goals from central midfield. And Rodri has stepped up and shown that he is often highlighted for his defensive capabilities, but he can score when it is necessary. I mean, he scored that winner for them against Inter in the Champions League final. So I think in certain degrees, Manchester City are lacking, but I think they have enough squad depth to come out and challenge against any team in Europe right now. For Sevilla, I think Sevilla should just really be grateful that they've managed to hold on to some of their most important players and not lose too many players in the transfer market. Number one I'd like to talk about for Sevilla is En-Nesyri. En-Nesyri is such a fantastic player for Sevilla. He's the source of most of their goals right now. He's a perfect centre forward for Sevilla. He's quick, he's direct, he can score with his head. He's often highlighted for his aerial ability and his heading. And he can cause some major problems for a Manchester City team that is sometimes a little sluggish at the back. Next up, I'd like to talk about Eric Lamela. So Lamela's career kind of seemed like it was about to fizzle out at Tottenham Hotspur. And then I think he moved to Roma, and from Roma, he ended up at Sevilla, and his career sort of just reignited at Sevilla. He's become so important for them, giving them a bit of pace, dribbling ability, trickery out wide. He can also play in a kind of false nine position, where he can just dictate play centrally, play players through, dribble from the center of the pitch. I think Lamela is going to be very important for Sevilla, not just in this match, but for the entire season going forward, and they need to hold on to him. And finally, I'd like to talk about Ivan Rakitic. Now, Rakitic left Sevilla and went to Barcelona, won a crazy amount of trophies at Barcelona, and then came back to Sevilla. And everybody had thought he was over the hill. His time as a professional footballer was starting to dwindle. He was in the twilight of his career. But Rakitic has proven that for players like him, players who play centrally, who dictate play and control the tempo of a match, it's all about how fit you are mentally. Physical, it's very important, but you can get by not moving around too much and understanding your own capabilities. And that's exactly what Rakitic does. You don't see Rakitic with crazy sprints from out deep. You don't see him playing out on a wing, blasting past right backs or left backs. But you do see Rakitic with a slight drop of the shoulder or a quick shimmy to the left or shimmy to the right, and sort of blindsiding an entire defense. Rakitic plays very quickly because his mind is so attuned to understanding that everybody around him will be constantly moving, and he just needs to find them with those passes. He will be crucial for Sevilla in this game. Now, despite what I have said about Sevilla in the team analysis portion of this video, I think there are other players as well who are very important for them. The likes of goalkeeper Bono, who was so fantastic for Morocco, but also for Sevilla last season. I think also Lucas Ocampos is a great player for Sevilla. And I think that just goes to show that Sevilla in their own right have squad depth, and they have a lot of capable players in some very important positions. But I think still, I just feel that Manchester City, despite being weakened by the transfer market, are just still such an incredibly powerful team. They have enough flexibility, both on the team sheet, on the bench, and mentally, because their players they have this thing where they can switch between playing centrally or playing out wide, and they can still do such a fantastic job. Guardiola has sort of guided his players where they can play kind of total football, which is a principle that was brought about by the Dutch football teams like Ajax and Johan Cruyff's Netherlands squad and Barcelona as well. And he's instilled this in his players. So he doesn't have to worry too much about injuries and transfers, because he knows his players can adapt very well. And anybody who can't adapt, unfortunately, like João Cancelo, doesn't really have place in the City squad. And it is for that reason that I think Manchester City have just a little bit too much for Sevilla. I think City do have the potential to be very arrogant with the ball, and just try and maneuver things a little too much and just play too pretty instead of being direct. But I think now City have also understood that they need to be able to play on the counter as well as playing possession style. They need to be able to switch whenever it's necessary. It was a bit of a slip up against Arsenal, but I think still Manchester City are still the team to beat in Europe, and I think they win this one by at least a single goal, maybe two. Hi, thank you for making it to the end of this video. We really appreciate the watch time and the fact that you took some time out of your day to spend it with us talking about the sport that we all love. If you enjoyed the content, why not, drop a like down below or comment in the comment section. Maybe even consider subscribing to the channel. And I mean, while you are here right now, have a look at some of our old videos too. They should be appearing on the screen right now, along with that subscribe button, so you know exactly what to do. Thank you so much, it really helps with the YouTube algorithm, and have a great day out there, and we hope to see you again very, very soon. Thanks, stay safe.